Hello, this is BJ. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Read It Again. I'm here with you today in Bethlehem. We'll be looking at the Church of the Nativity. This is the third time I've been to this church, but it's the first time I actually went as a tourist. The first two times I went, I did not bring a camera with me. I didn't film anything. I didn't record anything. Simply wanted to just go and see it and experience it for myself before I shared that. Today I went and I specifically picked a time where I knew there would not be a lot of people in there, so you could see more of that and less crowds, and I wouldn't have to be worrying about trying to frame people in and out of shots. So what we'll be looking at is we're actually walking down, I don't remember if it was Children's Street or Star Street, but there are two streets that both pretty much end right at the Church of the Nativity. I was walking down one of those streets, and you can see it's a bazaar, and there's a lot of street shops and a lot of activities going on. So I shot some photos while I'm going up to that and then walking into the church. Really interesting thing with the church is you actually, when you're entering, unless you're about 3.5 foot tall, you have to bow to enter the church. And it's a very small door and a humbling door so that it just puts you in the right position as you enter the church. Anyways, you go into the church, you will see the location that Jesus was supposedly born, and you will also see the manger that Jesus was supposedly placed in. They are both there once we enter into the cave. It's really beautiful. It's a great opportunity, and even when I went a very early inopportune time, there was still multiple dozens of people that were going at the same time. The other two times that I've been, there have been hundreds, if not thousands of people, all either waiting in line or going through. When I did go, when I went, the Catholic church next door because there's actually, the Church of Nativity is three churches combined in one. There's an Armenian, a Greek Orthodox, and a Catholic church. Only the Greek Orthodox is open. The Armenian, I've not been able to find when that is open. Every time I go, it's not open. The Catholic Church usually is open. This time I went, it was not open. So I did not get to go down and see some of the other tombs. The tomb of Jerome, who wrote the Latin Vulgate, is also right there. I have to shoot that for another time for you guys. But anyways, this is the Church of Nativity. And also we're looking at my June reading blog. So I'll be looking down because I have my laptop right in front of me. And so I might be looking down at there just to talk about the books. So on one side, you'll be seeing the Church of Nativity and the photos with that. And then on the other side, I'll be posting just a little image of the books as I'm talking about those. So anyways, the first book that I read in the month of June, finished it in June 2nd, was The Life We're Looking For. And I've already talked about this book multiple times. It was a really good book. One of the best books I've read this year. I talked about it in my travel plans blog and then also in my mid-year freakout as my favorite book for the year. So it's a really good book. I would strongly recommend that. I'll put the links for these books down below. Second book I read was called Before You Go, Uncovering the Hidden Factors in Faith Laws. And this is by John Marriott. I finished it in June 7th. This book, John Marriott is a professor and also a scholar, and really his focus and his primary concern is people that have walked away from their faith and people that have abandoned their Christianity for one reason or another. And over the last couple decades, he has interviewed hundreds, if not thousands of people and had sit-down talks and done this and written multiple papers. So this is his forte. And in this book, he's talking about how there are some very common factors for everyone that has left Christianity. There are many things that all of them have in common, or most of them do have in common, and then they're not what you would think they are. And he also talks about one of the most important books I read a couple years ago was Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And Daniel Kahneman is probably the greatest scientist when it comes to studying the way we think and how we think and the way our brains do that. And John Marriott really took a lot of the knowledge and a lot of what was taught by Thinking Fast and Slow. John Marriott in Before You Go is taking that and applying it to When people are leaving Christianity, very often it is not for the reasons they're claiming it is. And he's using the science of thinking fast and slow and applying it to this topic. So it's a really great book. There was one illustration that I absolutely love. I just want to share. He talks about how our thought process is like a man on top of an elephant. And the elephant is our subconscious or our unconscious thinking. And it is our desires, our wishes, not just our emotions, much more than that. It is our unconscious thinking. And it goes wherever it wants to go. And now there's a guy sitting on top of the elephant, and the guy has no stick or no whip, or he has no way to control the elephant. He's just going where the elephant is taking him. But the guy on top is our reasoning brain. And the guy on top of that elephant is he's explaining to everyone that might pass by, this is why I am going in this direction, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And he's giving logical explanations for the elephant doing whatever the elephant wants to do, even though he has absolutely no control over it. And that really is, in many ways, we are not nearly as rational as we believe we are. And this is a perfect illustration to talk about that, how we rationalize the things we already want to do. And we think we are following our reason and our logic, but really our reason and our logic is following our subconscious desires and our subconscious wills. So before you go, that was a really good book. I can't really say I read it because I don't believe listening to an audiobook or a podcast counts as reading. It counts as listening. But there were a couple things I listened to. Yes, in June, there was just one. There was a few of them in May. One thing that I listened to, it was a lecture series called, this is by Inaudible, the lecture series, one of the great university courses. It's by Kenneth Harl, The Fall of Pagans and the Origins of Medieval Christianity. This was a 2-star. It was a very big disappointment for me. The reason this was a big disappointment for me was, well, 2 reasons. One, it bothers me. Kenneth Harl, supposedly, his supposed focus and area of expertise is the Anatolian Peninsula, which today we call Turkey. But he's constantly giving the Turkish names of the modern Turkish names of cities and absolutely butchering the Turkish. And not only that, his area of expertise is supposed to be the late Greco or Greek and early Roman era. However, he is also butchering the Greek names of people and places. So if he can't pronounce it right in the ancient times or in the modern times, how much does he really know? And that's one thing that really bothered me, is he's absolutely ruining both languages, Greek and Turkish. He's ruining them, butchering them. But also, there has been pretty much a modern, almost every major scholar in the last 100 to 150 years, they all say that the decline of Rome and the fall of paganism and the rise of Christianity happened in this way. Boom, 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 boom. And there's these things. And Kenneth Harl is coming and trying to tip over the whole apple cart and saying everybody else is wrong. All the other scholars are wrong. And this is the way it really happened. Sorry, I just don't buy that. If 99% of the scholars are saying one way and one thing, they're probably right. And Kenneth Harl, it was a waste of time, and it was a waste. I didn't pay any money for it, but it was a waste. So I was very disappointed with that. Don't ever listen to Kenneth Harl. If you're doing the Great Lecture Series, he's not one. It's the second time I've been disappointed by him. All right, the next book I read was a fiction book, The Ember and Ashes. And funny story, my channel is Read It Again. This is actually the second time I read this book, but that was not on purpose. I thought in the past I had soft DNF'd this book, and in my mind, I didn't remember the whole book. I thought I only read part of it, and that was it. So I figured I'm just going to start from the beginning and read and to catch up, because the book keeps appearing on suggested and on my radar. So I was like, I'm going to read this. So I started reading, and I thought I got about a third of the way through the book the first time, but I'm getting to a third, and yeah, I remember all this. Well, I don't really remember it, but I'm seeing it. And then I got to halfway, and then 2/3, and I kept saying, I stopped later than I thought I did. I stopped later than I thought I did, all the way up to the last page. This book was so forgettable that even while I'm reading it, I'm not remembering what had happened before. That doesn't happen to me most of the time. A book has to be incredibly mediocre for that to happen. And why is this book mediocre? Well, it's probably the same reason why most YA is mediocre. And sorry if I'm stepping on some toes, but all YA. Basically, they found one or two or three tropes that really work, and then people pick one or two of those and throw those tropes and mash them together and toss out another YA book. They're all the same. And Ember and Ashes, Sabaa Tahir, I'm sorry, but you're just following ideas that worked in the past, trying to make your book different, but every single YA book, they're all the same and they're all garbage. I'm sorry, guys, but it's true. So, for example, Twilight had a really great love triangle, or at least they popularized the modern version of the love triangle. Sabaa Tahir said, hey, no problem. We're going to throw two love triangles in there. Divergent, the Divergent series, they had the names of their people groups and the names of their cultures were ridiculously obvious names. Abnegation and all these, they were ridiculously obvious. Sabaa here said, hey, that was a really successful book. We're going to do that too. We're going to call our cultures the marshals and the scholars and the merchants. Really? All that is lazy world building. She couldn't create her own worlds, and so she just threw names in there, hoping people would fill in the gaps themselves. Sorry, that doesn't work. Hunger Games had this competition that was incredibly dangerous, and most of the book revolves around this large competition that was incredibly dangerous. So Sabaa Tahir said, hey, you know what? Let's throw that in there too. And we have this competition to see who in this school to see who's going to become the next emperor. And speaking of schools, Harry Potter. There is the semi-romantic, will they come together, will they not, Harry and Hermione. Here, I don't even remember his name, Elias, I think, in Georgia. Semi-romantic, are they going to come together, are they not? We all know they're not going to come together in the end. She's just taking all these tropes and all these ideas from other books that worked, mashing it all together and saying, buy my book, when it's lazy garbage writing. So there's that. Next two books I've already done reviews for. Those are The Republic and the Tao Te Ching. You can go ahead and watch my past videos if you want to look at those. I also completed two commentaries on Philippians. I finished reading two commentaries on Philippians. And you're like, why would you do that? Actually, this spring I had a class on Biblical Greek for my master's in divinity that I'm working towards, and my MDiv in global studies. And for the class, I needed to write multiple papers on one very specific segment of the Bible. And I chose to work on Philippians chapter 2. And so I had to write multiple papers on Philippians chapter 2. So in preparation for that, I actually bought or got for myself 4 different commentaries on Philippians. And then once the class ended, I wanted to read the rest of it, not just the part I used, but read the entire commentary. So I've now finished 3 of those. One of these was by Gerald Stokes, and the other was by F.F. Bruce. If I was going to rate the 4, F.F. Bruce would be the second best. Stokes would be the weakest. It's still good, but it's just the weakest of the 4 that I got. My favorite on there, I actually wrote about that talked about that in Books That Make You Happy. I haven't finished it yet. I will be finishing that in July. Also, I read, but really reread, Gentle and Lowly. My sister Krista from Books and Jams, who, by the way, her birthday is tomorrow. So if you see her, or if you're following her, feel free to stop over and tell her a happy birthday. But anyway, she hosted a reading 4 times in the month of June. We looked at 6 different chapters from Gentle and Lowly, and many others, Oshina and Amanda and Larissa, and I feel bad. There was a couple others that also joined her. I'm sorry, I should remember who they are, but I'm not looking. But anyways, you guys did a great discussion, and it really made this book come alive. I really appreciate the way you did that. So I love that. Thank you very much. And finally, the last book that I read in the month of June was Life Surrendered by Jessica Herberger. I got this through NetGalley as an ARC, but by now it has already come out, so you should be able to get this and read it if you want to. It's a look at the life of Christ. It is a look, not the life of Christ, Good Friday. It's a walk through Good Friday. But also Jessica Kernberger, she had experienced a very traumatic moment in her life. Her mother died and her baby was born almost simultaneously. And if I'm remembering this correctly, she was at her mother's bedside and then went almost immediately from the bedside to another portion of the hospital to deliver her baby, and then was released from the hospital early, got special permission to be released early from the hospital to be able to go to the wake and the graveside funeral. So literally it was right on top of each other. Death and birth, new birth, coming right on top of each other. So she's using the Stations of the Cross, or she's using the Good Friday, the event of Good Friday, to share her own experiences and kind of combining those, and then at the end has a very practical application center where there's a few questions. There's like a reflect and repent and confess areas that you can look at the end. So it's the idea is really good, but I felt like this is one of those books that I'm sure it was very cathartic for her to write. However, the juxtaposition of these two really took away from me the impact and the power that the cross should have had on its own. So it's a good book. I'm not going to, complain too much, but it just, when you're looking at books regarding Good Friday or regarding the death and resurrection of Christ, there are a lot of good books out there. So that's that. Thank you for joining, and go read it again.